is excited because we are about our session. Okay, so my name is Renate Bauer-Richter. I'm the director at the Institute for Inclusion and Accessibility in Abu Dhabi. And I'm the chair of the session, but I'm also the timekeeper, which is the most less glamorous part of this entire session, and I was told that there will be penalties if we are not on time. So, let's get started. Why the session exists, and I think this is really important to recall. Most crises in the world, on community level, national, with corporates, are built around the default human. Someone who hears the sirens, can read the alerts, process information, and walks to the exit. We all know this human is fiction. And the entire crisis and emergency response architecture is built for these fictional humans. And now, if you have a mobility impairment, you're at least visible, right? Because people think about ramps, they think about evacuation chairs, and there's a category for you, even if the response is often not adequate. But what if the disability is intellectual, psychosocial? What if you're autistic and the entire sensory environment of an emergency, the noise, the crowds, the broken routines, is itself a crisis? What if your communication needs are not met when you're in a shelter? What if the community support is not the answer in case of an emergency? What if the answer is enforced institutionalization? And this is where the gap is widest. But this is also where our speakers today build solutions. And the title of the session, let me repeat it, is Crisis Response Models Led by Persons with Disabilities. And let's really hear word for word. It's led. It's not designed for, it's not informed by, it's led by people with disabilities. Because who usually writes those crisis plans? Experts, right? Experts who don't live in the gaps. Experts who know a category but don't know humans and real needs. And this afternoon you will hear what actually changed if people with lived experience are actively involved in delivering solutions. So in the next hour, just looking at our prime timekeeper, we have 4 presentations, each of them 7 minutes. And then one of them is a recorded video, because one of the panelists couldn't join us here in Vienna. And then we're in for a special treat by Petra Plicker, who will help us to memorize this incredible session, because it's a lot of information, condensed information. And Petra will guide us at the end through her interpretation and her summary. And just don't forget to take pictures because this is a takeaway of our session. Okay. Let me introduce you to the stars of this session, and I'm just giving you the headlines. So we have on my left the colleagues from Japan. We have to my right the project from Turkey, and then the lady in the bright color, Nicole Atong, joins us from Florida, US. And we also have Gabriela Weinberger, who joins us via a recorded video. And I think it's really important to understand that all these projects that are presented here are not theoretical frameworks. These are actual solutions that worked in actual crises, sometimes put into action while the wildfires were still burning. And just to give you an idea about the dimensions of the emergencies and crises our panelists dealt with, Özgür Konuk from the Turkey Down Syndrome Association developed a solution in response to the devastating earthquake from Feb 2023. And I think we all have those pictures still in our minds, right? And the sheer dimension is incredible. So 50,000 lives lost, 10 cities completely devastated, and 3 million displaced. And now we're talking about where are people with disabilities. And this is exactly where all of our panelists created solutions. I see you. So what we also do, we have these 3 incredible presentations. In total, we are covering 4 continents. And there will be questions, right? So what we're going to do is, because Gabriela can only join us via recorded video, after the 3 panelists here presented their solutions, we will have a Q&A. And then we'll move on to Gabriela's video, and then we have the pleasure of Petra's summary. So that's how we roll. And then let's get started. Yuhei and Mao, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. ご招待ありがとうございます。精神障害投資社会ポルケの山田雄平です。
Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Yuhei Yamada, the representative director of Polke, an organization of persons with psychosocial disabilities in Japan.
日本で行っている当事者の経験値をもとに共同で作った危機対応防災のモデルをご紹介したいと思います。
I would like to introduce our crisis response and disaster preparedness model that we co-created with partners in Japan based on the lived experience of persons with psychosocial disabilities.
災害は誰にも起こりますが、影響は同じではありません。
Disasters can happen to anyone, but their impacts are not the same for everyone.
1000年に一度とも言われているぐらい大規模の災害となった2011年に起きた東日本大震災では、災害のある人の死亡率は一般より2倍以上と報告され、包摂の不足が可視化されました。
At the time of the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011, often described as a once-in-a-thousand-years disaster, the mortality rate of persons with disabilities was reported to be more than twice that of the population without disabilities, and this made the lack of inclusion visible.
特に精神障害のある人は、避難所環境の急な変化、意思疎通の壁、 偏見、支援の中断などでリスクが高まります。
For persons with psychosocial disabilities, risks increase due to sudden changes in environment in evacuation sites, communication barriers, stigma and misconceptions, and disruption in support and services.
このギャップが命に直結します。
The gap can be a matter of life and death.
ここが私たちが取り組む課題となります。
Those are the challenges we are working on now.
私たちの解決策は単なるツールではなく、当事者主導の共同創造モデルです。
Our solution is not just development of a tool, it is mainstreaming of a co-creation model led by lived experience.
災害時に何が困るのかを具体的な行動と役割に具体化します。
We translate what was difficult in the disaster into concrete action by specific stakeholders.
本人のエンパワーメントを強めるだけではなく、支援者、行政、事業者が同じ考え方で支えることを可能にします。
This approach strengthens the empowerment of individuals while also enabling supporters, local governments, and service providers to respond to their needs based on a common framework.
そして当事者を守られるだけの存在ではなく、地域の安全に貢献する主体として位置づけ、スティグマの低減にもつなげます。
It positions persons with psychosocial disabilities not merely as those to be protected, but as active contributors to community safety with addressing stigma.
進め方は4段階で行っています。
We move forward in 4 stages.
第一に被災した当事者の経験を丁寧に聞き、具体的な課題と解決策を整理します。
First, we carefully listen to the experiences of people who have been affected by disasters and specify challenges and solutions.
第二に当事者と研究者および支援の実践者で今後の防災対策を共同設計します。
Second, persons with lived experiences, researchers, and practitioners co-design future preparedness measures.
第三にワークショップなどを行い普及啓発に取り組みます。
Third, we conduct workshops to promote awareness and develop capacities.
最後に具体的な制度の問題や運用の課題を解決するためのソーシャルアクションに取り組みます。
Finally, we take social actions to address concrete institutional gaps and operational challenges.
これまでの成果物は主に4つあります。
So far, we have developed 4 key outputs.
1つ目がガイダンス文書、被災経験の調査活動に基づく実践の考え方、主な知見、提言を整理しました。
First, a guidance document that summarizes practical principles, key findings, and recommendations based on our interviews with colleagues with lived experiences.
2つ目が精神障害のある人の防災チェックリストで本人用と支援者用の2種類があります。
2, a disaster preparedness checklist for persons with psychosocial disabilities. 3, a disaster preparedness checklist for supporters.
3つ目がワークショップや研修に利用する動画コンテンツです。
4, a video which can be used in workshops and training.
どれも日常の延長で対話を生み、具体的な備えに落とし込む設計であります。
All of these are designed as extensions of everyday life, and they are designed to promote dialogues and to lead to concrete actions for preparedness.
ここで参加者の声を紹介したいです。
One of our participants said,
災害が怖すぎて考えたくなかった。でも仲間と参加して必要以上に怖がらなくてよいと分かった。
quote, I was very afraid of disasters and I didn't want to think about them. But by joining the workshop with peers, I realized that I don't need to be afraid too much.
完璧を目指すのではなく、今日できる小さな一歩に集中できた。
Instead of aiming for perfection, I could focus on the small steps I can take now. Unquote.
ピアサポートの実践はとても重要なものです。
As this indicates, peer support is essential.
ピアの関わりが心理的安全性を作り、備えを継続可能にします。
Peer connection creates psychological safety and makes preparedness sustainable over time.
革新性はツールそのものだけではありません。
The innovation is not only in the tools themselves.
日本でも先駆的に経験値がリーダーシップを持つプロセスとして進めています。
In Japan, we are advancing this work through a process where persons with lived experience takes a leadership role, pioneering in the area.
実際の被災経験に根ざした実践であります。
It is rooted in real disaster experiences.
障害者の権利と災害リスク削減を研究実践地域の共同で橋渡しし、インクルーシブな在り方を形にしました。
We bridge disability rights and disaster risk reduction through collaboration across research, practice, and community, and we have been shaping a tangible model of inclusion.
実装は当事者団体が主導しつつ、研究機関、自治体、支援現場と連携をしています。
Implementation is led by our organization in partnership with research institutions, local governments, and frontline practitioners.
地域差を尊重しながらも、進め方は再現できるようにしており、他地域にも展開可能な形を目指しています。
While respecting regional differences, we have made the process reproducible, aiming for a model that can be adapted and scaled up to other areas.
継続のために、資金は助成金だけに依存せず、連携による事業も組み合わせています。
For sustainability, we do not rely solely on one grant. We combine various fundings with collaborating with partners.
ツールは固定ではなく、更新し続ける前提で運用をしています。
Our tools are not meant to be the final products. They are designed to be continuously updated.
研修費用などから持続可能な形を模索をしています。
We are exploring possible sustainable models, including making revenues from training and capacity building programs in the future.
次のステップは私たち3つあります。
Our next steps are threefold.
より多くの自治体で実装をすること。
First, to implement the model in more municipalities, more local communities.
普及のためのアライアンスネットワークを拡大すること。
To scale up the alliance or network to support broader dissemination.
そして導入、研修の共同実施と効果の評価に一緒に取り組むパートナーを増やすことです。
Three, to increase the number of partners who will co-deliver trainings and work with us to evaluate the impacts.
インクルーシブな備えを推進して、精神障害のある人の視点から災害リスクを減らし、命を守る取り組みを進めていきたいと思います。
By advancing inclusive preparedness, we aim to reduce disaster risk and protect lives of people based on the perspectives and experiences of persons with psychosocial disabilities.
Thank you so much.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
I mean, it couldn't be better, right? This is the essence of the Zero Project, putting people with disabilities, with lived experience in the driver's seat of action. Let them inform preparedness plans. Let them decide what works for them, and just think about this beautiful concept of having a video and what someone said, making disaster preparedness, and I think we all have the tendency to avoid it, right? I at least, manageable. And this is the first step to better solutions. And Özgür,
Yeah.
I think you worked
Yes.
with a similar approach.
Yes.
The stage is yours. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Özgür Konuk. I am 40 years old, and I have little hair, not yet bald. I try to look smart because I'm exciting. And I wearing a blue jacket, and I wear a little blue shirt. On the other hand, I am a education consultant, the Turkey Down Syndrome Association, also a special education teacher. This story starts with a simple but powerful lesson we learned after disaster. Today I want to share how we tried to build to move inclusive and accessible response. On February 6, 2023, a very strong earthquake hit the south of Turkey. Many cities were destroyed, many families lost their homes. For persons with disability, the situation was much harder. Many families couldn't get information. Education and health services stopped. Families felt alone. We understand one thing very clearly. We need a fast, accessible, and inclusive response. At first, we gave emergency support, but we didn't want to stop there. We asked ourselves a question: how can we support families not only today, but also tomorrow? So we created the Future Plus One Academic Container Education Centers. These containers are not only temporary space. They are safe and accessible learning centers. They support children and families together. This was our innovation. Now, let me explain how this model works in practice. Before building the centers, we worked for 3 months. We visited the field, we talked to families, we worked with local institutions. Then we opened 4 centers, most effective centers in city: Hatay, Adıyaman, Kahramanmaraş, and Gaziantep. Each center has a special education teachers, physiotherapists, preschool teachers, psychological counselors, and social workers. We work with children, families, and the community. After building this structure, the next important question was, what kind of impact did we create? Our work continued for 2 years. During this time, we worked with 53 institutions. We had almost 8,000 meetings. We reached 1,045 people directly. We met with persons with Down syndrome, typical developing children, children with other developmental differences. We also trained 356 professionals, 550 families. On World Down Syndrome Day, 489 people joined our events. This impact was only not on people, but also on the system. Of course, to create this impact, we also needed clear and well-managed resources. This budget only shows the grant money we used. We also continue to work with our own money. Our total budget was 2.5 million Turkish liras. This budget was used for building the containers, accessible arrangements, education and therapy materials, staff salaries, training, and coordination. Each fully accessible container cost between 800,000 and 1 million Turkish liras. We used our resources carefully and transparently. But what happened after the emergency period was over? After 2 years, something important happened. The container centers were transferred to local municipality and school under the Ministry of National Education. But the work did not stop. They are used as inclusive education spaces. They are not only for disaster, they are also for normal times. These show sustainability. And this brings me to the most important point, why this model really matters. This experience taught us a clear lesson: disasters are temporary, but inequalities are not. Persons with disabilities are not charity cases. They are right holders. The Future Plus One Academy is inclusive by design, sustainable in practice, scalable for other regions. For us, February 6th is not only a disaster date, it is a starting point for solidarity and a starting point for right-based action. Thank you for attention. Thank you.
Teşekkürler Özgür. And
Rica ederim.
how incredible is this, you know, to come up with this solution in such an amount of time, short amount of time, and really provide structure and routines and education right at the center of such a disaster zone. I really would love to hear more about it in our Q&A. And Nicole, from direct disaster response to the research underlying all of this, what does your evidence tell us about building those inclusive communities before a crisis hits?
Hello, my name is Nicole Attown. I am the Executive Director of Florida International University Centers for Advancing Inclusive Communities. I am here today to speak with you. I don't know how to change this. Is it? Oh, I apologize. I'm technically challenged. I'm here today to speak with you about a difficult subject for us. We would like to talk to you about active shooter training and how we modified the training in collaboration with students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. First, let me tell you a little bit about who we are. Florida International University is the third largest public research institution in the United States. We have about 56,000 students plus. We have $306 million in research, and yes, that's after all the research money was taken away and all of that. The university is housed across 2 large campuses, over 500 acres. We are an open campus. The beautiful thing about FIU is that we are the economic engine of our community. By that I mean we put out the teachers, the law enforcement officers, so people that we find working in our community. But we also have a special program on campus. We have a program for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities who cannot graduate from college with a degree. They are learning how to work, play in our environment. We're getting them ready for life. So you might ask, why is an active shooter training needed at a US institution? Well, unfortunately, it's only a matter of time, I think. In 2023 alone, there were 3 faculty members wounded on campus. In 2024, 24 active shooter incidences nationwide. And then when we go to 2025 and 2026, just this year alone, we've had 32 people killed and 85 people wounded in mass shooting. On February 14th, South Florida mourned the loss of 17 people, teachers and students who were killed in high school. And about that same time, FIU had a swatting situation. What that means is somebody said there was an active shooter on campus, and the campus went into immediate lockdown. It was at that time that I realized that we were not prepared. Our students were not prepared to respond. And so you might ask yourself why these kinds of responses are insufficient. Well, for everything that has been said earlier by my colleagues, our students are slower to respond. They freeze. They need additional support, right? And so we had to work with our institution, law enforcement at the institution, and first responders around us to be able to develop a response system. And when we started that work, the first thing I said is, we need to stop. Our students need to be at the table. They need to be driving the discussion and telling us why we need this work. And so we believe, both I speak on behalf of the leadership of our institution, that we must ensure that certain things are provided after speaking with the students, walking through the experience, and understanding where they are coming from. We decided we needed to do some things. We decided that fire rescue and certain law enforcement groups around the university campuses needed to be prepared. 911 operators needed to be prepared in case they got a call from a student with intellectual disabilities who could not share everything that was going on. We needed to modify our training exercises, and we certainly, leadership needed to include in their tabletop decisions a voice from our students. And so we develop a participatory process in the response. So we took the nationally organized and the certified training program, and we modified it to include the voices of our students. We do annual training. We do a modified Stop the Bleed with our students. They learn how to stop the bleed. They learn how to support someone who's hurt. We do a modified Run, Hide, Barricade, and Defend Yourself. And our police department is always dressed in SWAT, so they understand what a SWAT officer would look like and how to respond to such a person. We also recognize that many of our staff have been traumatized by life, things in life, and so we have embedded trauma-informed responses as a part of our training. And, And the other thing that we've done, I think that's important to share, is that the entire university has been invested in this response. And what they have said to me, deans and chairs of colleges, is by modifying this and presenting this response in simple language, inclusive text, accessible information, people are now on campus with different types of disabilities feeling secure and supported and heard in this. And so, thank you, and I'm sorry, I think I ran over.
Nicole, that was truly impressive, and really having people with intellectual disabilities, people with disabilities at the table as part of this participatory approach that all of our panelists described. I think let's reflect on a second, and while you let this sink in, we invite you to raise a few questions. We have 5 minutes for a Q&A. So I know this is heavy, what we are talking about, right? Earthquakes, active shooters at a campus, for you here as well. But there might be questions, maybe also regarding transferable insights. If you could just introduce yourself and then let us hear.
Thank you so much for the wonderful speeches, really. I'm Galina Tsimbal from Ukraine, and I represent 2 organizations that work with people affected by disabilities. One is based in Ukraine and another one based in the US. And actually my question, your recommendation, your advice concerning what can be done right now in Ukraine, and specifically, how can people with disabilities avoid, or what should they do when Russian soldiers come and want to rape or start torturing them? Usually there is nobody to protect people with disabilities, and usually they are the easiest victims. And maybe this is the question, it's hard to find answers, to, but still, what would you recommend? Probably this is the question to Nicole Atten. I'll be really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the things we did that was successful is actually two things. First, we had law enforcement walk through the spaces in various buildings where we knew our students would be and identify what would be good hiding places and how to barricade themselves. The second thing we did was we took all of our students there and we practiced these drills over and over. Our staff has a room that they could go into. We've added cameras in certain areas so that we can watch people. So I think it's more about understanding your environment, understanding where the weakness is in the physical plant, which is what we did, shoring up those weaknesses, and then making sure that you implement your plan. You run your plan multiple times a year and keep doing it. So for Ukraine, I would say help them find a safe place. Help them be there often to be comfortable in that safe space for a long period of time, because you don't know how long it's going to take to be safe on the outside. And then develop a word, a song, something that you could then speak to them so that they know it's safe to come out. Oftentimes, people with disabilities lose their language, just like us. You know, we're afraid, we freeze. And so develop a special word that means something to them that they can speak to and you could say to them so they know it's safe to come out.
Thank you. I think this was also very transferable advice and recommendation. There's another question. Yes, please.
Hi. Nicole, this question is for you. My name is Rachel Dubin. I'm with the United States Congress. And we have some issues with including people with disabilities in emergency planning. I am not with the Sergeant at Arms office, but I've worked with them. So my question to you is actually two parts. One, how did you get buy-in to include from leadership, from the deans and the chairs, to include people with disabilities? That's one. Number two, do your students participate in the exercises? Thank you.
So the university has a mandated, I'll start with the second question first. The university has a mandated drill where every building must experience a mass shooter lockdown. That's a two-part. In the morning, it's stop the bleed. So you learn how to help someone stop the bleed and take care of them. The second half of the day is they send you back to your office and SWAT moves in shooting rubber bullets all over the place as they attempt to demonstrate and to put you into a scenario of an active shooter. What we did with, I think the scenario of the swatting, when the university went into lockdown, all leadership was in commencement. They were in graduation. So there were very few leaders who were not in the graduation hall. And my colleague informed me of the active shooter, which came to us via a news crew first. And then I am the one that informed leadership. It was at that moment, I think, that singular moment, that leadership said we needed to make a change. So unfortunately, sometimes it takes an experience for people to move, to understand, to come to the table. And since then, we've been using that singular experience to remind people of who is on our campus.
Thank you, Rachel, for the question, and thanks, Nicole. Unfortunately, I'm the one who can't take your question now to avoid penalties, but our speakers will be around after the session, so there's time to continue the conversation. Our next speaker couldn't join us in Vienna, but her work absolutely needs to be recognized in this room. And I ask the colleagues from the tech board to to show us Gabriela Verdugo's Weinberger's video that was pre-recorded from Wuhan in Chile.
Hello, my name is Gabriela Verdugo Weinberger. I'm from Chile, from Fundación Unión Autismo y Neurodiversidad FUAN, and this is the Guide Interdisciplinary Support Protocol for Autistic Individuals in Emergency Situations. This project was born in the middle of a real catastrophe. It answers a very specific question. What happens to autistic people when a disaster strikes? This is the cover of the guide, including the title and logos of the National Disability Service and FUAN. The image description is a colorful infinity symbol held by 5 people. In February 2024, Chile experienced a massive wildfire in the Valparaiso region. More than 100 people lost their lives and over 15,000 homes were destroyed. This is an aerial view of a hillside neighborhood destroyed by wildfire with burned houses, smoke, and extensive damage across the landscape. Why autistic people were especially affected? For autistic people, emergencies create extreme sensory overload, sudden change, loss of routines, and communication barriers. This increased trauma, anxiety, and exclusion. In response, FUAN developed and implemented the first interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary emergency accompaniment protocol for autistic people in Chile. The protocol coordinated health, education, social services, and emergency governance. This project required a strong transdisciplinary and technological effort, cross-sector data verification, real-time data updates, intersectoral coordination platform. This experience is now the basis for a future national risk management plan focused on disability. The protocol reached 146 autistic people and caregivers, all of them disaster survivors. We delivered more than 2,000 interdisciplinary sessions, psychology, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and special education supervised by neurologists. In the emergency response, we addressed highly specific support needs of autistic people that are often overlooked. Coastal fog was sometimes interpreted literally as smoke from a new fire, and the red sunset sky as flames returning, which reactivated trauma. We work to clearly reframe this natural phenomena through concrete communication. This shows that emergency protocols must include disability-specific strategies. Those are images of coastal fog entering the city of Viña del Mar and the sunset with red and orange clouds in Viña del Mar. So, inclusive disaster risk management is not optional, it saves lives. If emergency systems work for autistic people, they work better for everyone. And it must be built before the next emergency happens. Thank you very much.
Gabriela.
Hello.
I'm sure she can feel the positive energy in Chile. And I think this also gives us an idea what is necessary, and that the sheer numbers, 146 people on the autism spectrum involved and over 2,000 sessions, because the crises don't end when the fire is extinguished, and we need to work on this continuum of care. I think at this point, we're ready.
Yeah.
For Petra?
I think I am.
So, Petra, can you just tell us again, for those people who are joining for the first time, a visual map?
What it is?
What it
Okay.
is?
Okay. Let's move. Okay. So what I'm trying to provide here is a visual map of what was said, and then try to give a short summary in more or less easy language, because we want to provide accessibility also for people who are either not native speakers in English or have difficulties understanding all these complex topics that we're talking about. So let's try again. I think, first of all, we should mention once again the crises that have been presented to us. Like right now at the end in Chile, when we hear about wildfires and autistic people not knowing how to get help, but also active school shootings or university shootings in the US, where I didn't take down the numbers, but it's also a dramatic number of people who are affected by this. And talking about Turkey and Japan, dramatic earthquakes where we heard that people are left alone, people with intellectual disabilities. And right in the beginning, we heard the default human doesn't exist. So we don't have this one person who will always understand everything. And there's a big gap between the so-called default human and people with all kinds of needs. And what do we see the problems are? People with intellectual disabilities or psychodiversities or neurodiversities have lack of information. There is always a higher mortality rate when disaster strikes. People suffer from a lot more anxiety as they are cut off from information. Often they are slower to respond to crisis. And they're often traumatized from their experiences before, so there is a double traumatization happening. And thanks to these great panelists, there are solutions being presented. And I would like to just point out a few of them. I tried to put them all together. But especially when we talk about earthquakes, you don't have accessible shelters, you don't have accessible information. So what we heard, especially from Japan, was that you have to involve the people with lived experiences into disaster prevention planning. And that's what they're doing. They're training and teaching everybody, and this is a co-creation model. It's involving communities, scientists, all kinds of experts, and this is, I think, similar for all the models we heard. Co-creating the solutions and bringing the people with lived experiences to the table. Yeah? As one of the big solutions, we heard that you need to build inclusive communities who will take care of each other and who will speak in easy language. In the universities, we heard you have to practice, not only have a preparation, not only have a plan or a checklist, but really try what to do, find hiding places from shootings, and then practice to go there. I think overall the summary is involve people with intellectual disabilities and for instance, people from autism spectrum, with Down syndrome, with psychosocial disabilities in creating disaster plans and practicing together, experiencing it together, and seeing that we are humans all over together. And I would like to end with a quote from Özgür, if that's okay. You said, disasters are temporary, but inequalities are not. And maybe this is what we should take out from here, that we always remember together we can find the solutions, and not the so-called intellectuals. That's probably the summary. Thank you.
Petra, herzlichen Dank.
Gerne.
I mean, it's clear. In the last 60 minutes, we heard powerful examples that disaster response models are better when people with disabilities are actively involved. And let's be honest, these are not any pilots, right? These are not nice ideas. This is proven work. And all of these examples are scalable. So our panelists are around to continue the conversation with you and maybe find solutions for you. Before we head off, 3 things for you, actually 4. So if your organization has a crisis or continuity business plan, One thing you do when you come back to your desks, check if in your crisis response plans, in your organizations, in your sport facilities, in wherever you go, do they have the word disability there? And not on the last page, you know? There. Check it. And I tell you what we do with this. You get an action plan. If you fund programs, don't raise your hand, otherwise you will be swamped. But please make sure that these relatively low resource examples worked. So get this involved. It's not a matter of expenses. It's a matter of participatory approach. And third, if you're a person with a disability in this room, and you already know where the system fails you, where it breaks, speak with the organizations you're in touch with. And this is not a complaint, please. Don't frame it as a complaint. There's a word for it. It's actionable intelligence. Your insights are actionable intelligence. So bring it to your municipalities, to your organizations, and say, this doesn't work, but I know what works. And we have rocket fuel for you. Can we please get the QR code? This is your rocket fuel. This is very practical, and it helps. This is a report that will be available next week. And this is the evidence. Because people will ask you, how does it work? Is there any proof to it? Is there data? Yes, it is. It is in this report. So take this report and share it. So once again, arigato gozaimasu. Here. And to all who are celebrating Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Arigato gozaimasu.